Hey there. I was reviewing the hair tissue mineral analysis lab results passed on to me recently by a woman who hired me. She doesn't get migraines. She has chronic systemic candida, and she passed on her HTMA results that another practitioner had run for her. And so I was able to see the analysis that the other practitioner provided. And it was just so bizarre because this woman has a 4 lows pattern, all the major electrolytes really low, very low copper, very low iron, actually all of the minerals low. This is what happens when people have low stomach acid. They can't absorb and assimilate nutrients because they have that malnutrition-induced malnutrition when you don't have enough minerals to build the stomach acid needed to extract the minerals from the food, right? So this was definitely a deficiency pattern aside from some elevated mercury that can definitely get in the way. And of course, we know that copper removes mercury, so does iodine, so do a lot of other minerals like zinc. So if you're low in the minerals that remove mercury, you don't necessarily need like a big assault of mercury in order to get mercury toxic. It can just simply be that you don't have the minerals that your body would normally use to shuttle that out, so it slowly accumulates in your system. But what struck me about this is that this was clearly a pattern that I would usually say this person would benefit from copper, especially because the woman has anemia. A lot of times practitioners just try to solve anemia by giving more iron. This woman had heavy bleeding, heavy menstrual bleeding, losing a lot of iron that way. But iron and copper go together. They work together in a lot of functions, for hemoglobin, for getting oxygen into cells, for thyroid function, for a lot of things. So if you start taking a bunch of iron and you're already low in copper, that's going to further deplete copper, making it harder for your body to bring oxygen into the cells. So those two often need to go together. But in the case of someone who has Candida, that's a little complicated, right? And it got me really thinking because often when we see a true copper toxicity profile, this is caused by elevated estrogen. Estrogen causes an increase in absorption of copper. But in this case, the woman didn't have elevated copper, even though the other practitioner she saw was saying that she had potential hidden copper toxicity. You can read my blog post on this. I wrote a 3-part series on this issue of questioning this narrative of copper toxicity. Again, I'm not saying copper toxicity doesn't exist. It certainly does. But in HTMA methodology, a lot of times people are so afraid of copper and demonize copper so much that they're talking about this hidden copper. And then there's all these people that need copper, that could benefit from copper, that aren't getting that benefit because they're seeing a practitioner that's like terrified of hidden copper. And this is just really unfortunate because people need copper. People need copper for a lot of things: thyroid function, removing heavy metals, connective tissue integrity, stomach acid, the list goes on and on, white blood cell count. Now, let's think about this in relation to zinc, because I really think the issues that we identify as copper toxicity are actually the problem of too much copper without sufficient zinc. So copper does lower zinc. If you have too much copper at the expense of zinc, you're not taking zinc along with that to balance it out, then a lot of the things that we see that we attribute to copper toxicity, we start to understand are actually just zinc deficiency symptoms. Now, Candida thrives in an environment low in zinc. Zinc is antifungal. It also turns out that copper is antifungal. So why would we see elevated Candida in a situation where someone has high copper if copper is antifungal? Well, the reason is because I think it's the estrogen. Estrogen raises copper, and it's probably the estrogen that's actually feeding the Candida, mixed with the fact that, again, the copper is lowering the zinc that's also needed to keep Candida in check. So what we want is we want to get all the minerals that are antifungal to combat the Candida rather than just demonizing copper. We want to get zinc, we want to get copper, we want to get iodine all in balance. And yeah, Candida will thrive if you have too much copper at the expense of zinc. But in this case, this woman doesn't have a lot of copper and she has low white blood cell count. So that's real consistent. Her blood lab said low white blood cells, and that matches up with the low copper since you need copper to make white blood cells. What's one of the roles of white blood cells? It's to eat Candida. The neutrophils eat the Candida. So if you have low copper and therefore low white blood cell count, you won't have those neutrophils able to break down and eat the Candida, right? So this is all very complicated, but it's like, my point is just that it's really important not to demonize copper or demonize a particular mineral, but instead to look at all these mineral relationships. And they're complicated, but they make sense. And once we understand those properties, we can develop a nutritional balancing plan that's not gonna needlessly demonize something or cause other imbalances because that's not being kept in mind, right? This happens a lot. giving too much vitamin D would be the perfect example of like, too much of one supplement that's going to be at the expense of potassium, at the expense of all kinds of other minerals like magnesium. And I go over all this in the Repattern Migraine coursework. When people get their HTMA, I give them a synopsis of what's going on and point them to the places in the coursework where all of this is explained. So, but the point is like, here's a person who was put on hormonal birth control at a very young age to reduce her heavy bleeding. So basically put into chemically induced menopause. And hormonal birth control is known to deplete zinc and iodine. So, again, here we have women that at a very young age are experiencing nutrient depletions caused by pharmaceuticals like the hormonal birth control pill. It's the only medication, if you can call it a medication, it's the only pharmaceutical treatment that's designed to shut down a physical bodily system. We have a whole generation of women that were put on these as teens, causing these incredible mineral imbalances. So we know hormonal birth control lowers iodine. You need that iodine to remove mercury. You need that iodine for thyroid function, for all these things. And then we have, women with subclinical hypothyroidism. What goes along with hypothyroidism? Heart issues, heart disease, and Candida and estrogen dominance. And that's exactly what we're seeing here in this picture. So we need to start to wake up as a culture to the way our medical system is acting as a disservice to women, because it can take decades for women to unravel this and figure this stuff out and actually connect the dots of what caused what. And women need to be nourished and supported with the right minerals, and that can be done by looking at HTMA and hair tissue mineral analysis. But it's not surprising that Candida would thrive in an environment where you're deficient in all of the minerals that are antifungal, like boron, zinc, and iodine, right? Anyway, just wanted to share that because it upsets me when practitioners demonize copper when it's actually needed in a person's HTMA lab.